Hello and welcome to this market special from Business Today. I'm Udayan Mukherjee. With me is Abha Bakaya, and for the Diwali festive week we've got a real old-timer from the market for you, Madhusudhan Kela of MK Ventures, a veteran of many Diwalis and many Muhurat sessions on Dalal Street. Madhu, it's great to see you after a long time. You know, it's been an ordinary year for the market. I mean, that's one way to look at it, that it's a down year Diwali to Diwali, but we are one of the best performing markets in the world, relatively speaking. The big question is, from this Diwali to next Diwali, can we start making positive returns, or do you expect these challenging times globally to peg us back or rein us in once again?
Then first of all, wishing you, Abha, the entire team and all your viewers a very happy Diwali. Let me dissect this question into 2-3 parts. There is no doubt that the Nifty returns year on year has been negative. But when you look deeper, a little bit deeper in the market, so even though the mid-cap index has remained flat, there are more than 200 stocks which are up more than 20% in last 6 months. There are more than 300 stocks which are up more than 30% in the last 3 months, right? So market depth is telling us something else, and of course mid-cap and small cap have been a better performer than the larger market itself, right? So that's one way, and clearly, undoubtedly, I don't know, it is too early maybe to conclude, but there is something about Indian markets this time, Udayan. I have not seen this kind of strength in Indian market, for so many years. I've been tracking markets vis-a-vis global markets. So if you look at, I have this data here. Last 6 months, the markets across the world, whether it is Dow, S&P, Nasdaq, they are down 14, 18 and 22%. And Nifty is almost flat. So the similar story in last 3 months. Nifty is up 8% and these indices are down 5, 8 and 10% respectively. So I feel there is, are we saying that we are completely decoupled with the world, and regardless of where the world goes, India will continue to perform well? Maybe that is not the case, but there is something about Indian markets this time which is possibly attracting the global market. And that gives me the confidence, Udayan, that maybe this noise which we have about the globe is been around for a long time, right? These are not new issues which we are discussing. They are possibly, a lot of them are now old, maybe 6 months old, and to some extent they are reflected in the prices globally. Look at what has happened to a lot of companies in Nasdaq, Europe, everywhere in the world. So I would suspect that maybe over the next 2-3 months, 4 months, this noise will subside, and once that subsides, I think Indian markets definitely should do better than most markets in the world.
Let me ask you a difficult question, Madhu. I mean, of course your point is very well taken. The relative strength of India has been nothing short of remarkable. But if you have to look the next 6 months out, what do you think is a greater probability? That we will finally start to break out of this range and make a new top? Or is it more likely that before that happens, we will go back and retest the June lows of 15,000 on the Nifty? Of these two, in the next 6 months, which is a greater likelihood?
Then I'm not trying to deceive this question, but it is so difficult to predict the market in the next 3-month, 6-month zone. I would say that market remains broadly in the range. That is my that's my outlook today. That it's very difficult for the markets to break up and make a new high in this kind of scenario in the world. For that, the world scenario will have to improve, right? And if you look at the breaking down, we have had so many global uncertainties with them, and of course, a lot is happening. A lot has happened even with India. Inflation last month was higher than what we anticipated. RBI increased interest rate. The IIP numbers were lower than market was expecting. The GDP numbers were lower than what the markets were expecting. But none of this has been able to break down the markets, is what I would say. So for even breaking down the market, you need some, some big event to happen globally, something like a big war breaking out, or, now people are assigning even the nuclear possibility at 5-10%. Obviously, if something like that happens, clearly India will be part of the world, and we will trend in line with the global markets. But for the time being, then trust me, this beautiful market to make investments. You are able to find plenty of bottom-up opportunities where the balance sheets are significantly deleveraged, debt levels have gone down, companies are consolidating, and companies are doing well fundamentally, and a lot of it is getting reflected in the stock prices.
You're a stock picker, Madhu, at the end of the day, but have you had reason to realign or churn your portfolio in a significant way because of what has happened over the last 6 or 9 months? I mean, because sectors like IT, real estate have done very poorly over the last few months. From your own portfolio, the stocks that you own, have you had to throw out some or include some new sectors into the portfolio?
Yeah, we have done that, Udyan, and I would say we are actively evaluating all the times, and now since I'm largely on my own, so it gives me a greater flexibility, because in a way I'm not answerable to anyone. But I've got out of a lot of so-called, maybe you can call it whether poor quality businesses, or wherever I had little bit of doubt on corporate governance on the stocks which I owned, or the stocks which were in my definition were very expensive. I got out of them, and obviously we have got into a lot of stocks where we saw a lot of value. And in fact, then to be very honest with you, I am myself surprised at the portfolio, the way it is gained and the way it is sustaining. See, what is the beautiful thing about Udyan, this market is that it is gaining and not losing ground. In spite of there are so many headwinds, there are a lot of companies which are like making 52-week highs and sustaining at that levels.
Okay. You actually, talked about how some companies are looking really good, right now, and balance sheets are looking pretty healthy. We've been eyeing the kind of capex plans some companies had outlined, whether or not they'd stick with them given the current market conditions. Would you, break these up into certain segments or sectors that are looking more attractive, Madhu, or would you be stock specific?
Yeah. So I'll largely speak about 4 or 5 things, Abha, here, where we are looking at stocks. One, clearly financial sector has been my most favorite sector over the last 12 months, and a lot of stocks have done well. Some companies which we bought have actually done very, very well. I think this is still at an inflection point. Even with headwinds, there might be some consolidation, but I think this is a sector which has a lot of winners over the next 2-3 year time frame, and this is a very large sector. Basically now we are looking at blend of whether they are private banks, there are NBFCs, or maybe 1 or 2 public sector banks as well. Okay. The other place where we are excited now is on the healthcare and the pharmaceutical side, because this sector has done really poorly when it comes to stock performance over the last 12 months. There were reasons to it. US FDA had not visited a lot of these companies. There are no new approvals which had come. There was generic drug pricing pressure which was there in the US, and clearly people were postponing treating all ailments apart from caring about COVID. And now all of that, in my opinion, is ending. And most importantly, the logistics cost, which is a large portion of the cost for a lot of pharma companies, have actually come down meaningfully. So I feel all of these headwinds will partially become tailwinds over the next 12 months, and with stock correction, some of these companies are looking attractive. The third basket is clearly the manufacturing and the China Plus. Now that is really a large theme, and I think that is something which is here to stay. When I talk to majority of the companies, for the first time, a lot of them are confirming that yes, we do have longer term export orders. We do have orders which are profitable, and the inquiries are there for shifting business from China to India. And lastly, we like, select stocks in the infrastructure sector which have been beaten down, which have not done well in the last 10-15 years. Again, this industry has seen a lot of consolidation. The number of players have gone down and their order book is looking very, very healthy over the last 2 months. This is not a sector which is being widely discussed or spoken about, but I clearly see a lot of attractive opportunities given the anticipated performance of some of these companies over the next 2-3 years.
You spoke about financials, Madhu, but I want to ask you or dig a little deeper into that, because it's been a very odd year in terms of financials. Stocks like Federal Bank, Bank of Baroda have gone up 30-40%. But what you would expect to lead, or which has led in the past, stocks like Kotak Bank or HDFC Bank are actually down 10-15%. So which end of the financial spectrum are you most bullish on?
So we own a lot of mid-cap banks, some of them which you mentioned and some which you did not. So I've been most bullish because that is where the valuations were beaten down. Some of these banks were available within at 0.3 or 0.4 time book value maybe 1 year back, and now they have got down to maybe 0.7 or 0.8 time if I took 2 years forward and it took my assumptions. But these banks, then some of them will report with 15 to 18% ROE over the next 2-3 years in this cycle. Then what I would just like to point one really big data here. We were doing analysis between 2015 and 2022. 17 lakh crore rupees of provision is being made by public sector and private sector banks put together, which is more than 20% of the entire banking book. I repeat again, which is more than 20% of the entire average banking book. So you can imagine the kind of cleanup which we have seen in this sector. And I see there is a real fear in the borrower also. No one wants to go to jail. So I think more than the lender, when we talk to corporate sector, a lot of corporate responsible companies are very, very careful about borrowing, about what to the extent they want to leverage. So this credit culture coupled with this cleanup really argues well for this sector. Now you spoke about HDFC Bank and you spoke about Kotak Bank, but you look at State Bank of India and look at ICICI Bank. ICICI Bank is virtually life high, maybe 2-3% from the high. So it's been a mixed performance in the sector. So some of the large banks have done well, a lot of mid-sized banks have done well, and some of the NBFCs have done well. But I would say sector as a whole still will have a lot of steam to go if I take a 3-year view for investment.
The one sector, Madhu, you've been quite skeptical about is these new age digital companies, because I remember we spoke around the Paytm listing and you were very, very skeptical. But now these stock prices have more or less corrected 50, 60, 70%, Paytm, Zomato, Policy Bazaar. At these levels, do you find any value or you're still not convinced?
So then we are evaluating. Nothing screaming has come in my way. We remain, as you know, the only rule which I follow is there are no rules. So we are always open to look at investment opportunities. Honestly, I haven't found anything. We keep evaluating, but still maybe the stock prices have corrected quite a lot. So there may not be as severe a correction as it had happened in the last 12-18 months. Maybe they will consolidate before the financial performance really catches up. But I haven't found anything serious here, Except, when Zomato really fell, it fell to around 40 rupees. At that time, I was very tempted to buy. But maybe I was late by 2 days. So we keep evaluating, Udyan, but haven't found anything compelling here.
Madhu, the India story in the context of what's happening globally, how do you feel we stand in a global recession? Will it actually dampen prospects for Indian investors as well as pessimism and gloom and doom ensues? Or do you feel India will continue to really stand out and there will be a stronger case perhaps even for the globe to look at India?
So there could be shorter term correction in line with what is happening in the global market, Sabha, but I am quite positive on India. I think, again, there are two things. One, how does the Indian economy do and how does the stock markets do? So my view is very clear, unambiguously. In all this noise, मैं कोई घबराहट से नहीं देख रहा हूँ. I am not looking at it with any scare. I think I am very, very focused, and I am advising all the people who listen to me, that in this you have to just look for opportunities. There is if because of X, Y, Z global reason, if a company which is doing really well fundamentally, which is linked to India, which is linked to a domestic economy here, and the prospects are good, you should really avoid listening to the global noise and focus on opportunities here. And that's what we are doing. So I think India, in my view, will really do well in spite of all the global noises which are around.
The one story which did not quite play out, at least from a stock market perspective over the last year, Madhu, is the real estate story. Because there was a lot of expectation that we are embarking on a new real estate cycle, realty stocks will do well, and then all the home building materials, etc., will be carried along with it. But stocks like Godrej Properties, the good ones, India Bulls Real Estate, they've all collapsed 30, 40%, 50% over the last 1 year. What's going on there? And do you like that sector, or do you think it's still too early to get in there?
So we have one or two investments in the sector, Udyan, where we see deep value. But apart from that, not a huge weightage per se. Traditionally, Udyan, because people have lost a lot of money in the real estate sector because of governance issues. Clearly, if you look at the sales, if you look at the collections of a lot of the real estate companies, the sales and the collections and the cash flow actually have been very, very good. But somehow it is not reflected in the numbers. And that is preliminary. If you look at the ROE of a lot of these companies, Udyan, they are still very poor. And this is one reality, Udyan. Wherever we see free cash flow and we see ROE and ROC, then only markets really respond to companies. So a lot of these companies are still trading at single-digit ROE, and that is the reason why, in spite of good cash collection, the markets are not responding to them.
Well, you spoke about two sectors which you like, financials and healthcare. So in these, I want to highlight two subsectors within these two themes which have not done very well last year, and ask for your thoughts on that. In financials, it's insurance which has not done very well. Even blue chips like HDFC Life have not performed over the last 1 year. And in healthcare, diagnostic stocks have collapsed, with all the Dr. Lal, Metropolis, etc. But do you see opportunities in any of these, or are these two avoids in your book?
No, it is an avoid in my book, Udyan. I think those stocks were very expensive, But see, again, as my great friend, philosopher and guide, Rakesh used to say, that there is a buffet out here. You don't have to eat everything. You can choose what you want to eat. So these are things which I am personally not looking at for investing even now, because see, a lot of these like say diagnostic companies had that one-time COVID income, and the stocks had really run up. And so for those kind of even financial performance to carry on, there will be some amount of consolidation in terms of time which will be required. So we are not looking at those kind of companies. We are essentially looking at, Udyan, the traditional API, the traditional generic companies, the traditional companies which are focused on domestic market, which is very lucrative and which is still growing at 12 to 15% locally here. So I would say there are ample opportunities to look, and some of these companies, Udyan, are really trading at very attractive valuation compared to even the historical averages, But because the reported number, this is a very point which I want to emphasize with them, because the reported number for the last 3 quarters or last 4 quarters, for a variety of reasons, maybe the logistics costs were very high, maybe the US generic prices were abnormally high, maybe there was an inventory cleanup which was going on. So last 12 months, I've been reported profit for a lot of these companies have been poor, and that is why the stocks have not done well. But in my view, a lot of these factors are temporary in nature, and we will see a lot of them reversing back over the next 12 months.
What about aviation, Madhu? I'm curious as to your thoughts there with airlines coming back on stream. Of course, Akasa has launched. We've got Jet coming back, possible tie-up or merger plans in terms of, the back end when it comes to Singapore Airlines and Vistara. Lots brewing in the aviation space. So what's your take on the sector as of now?
So, no really a take on a sector. As a disclosure, I own a small equity in Akasa Airline, but that's a real long-term investment which I made, but no other investment on the aviation sector.
Do you feel perhaps that it is a space that we're going to see further boom on the back of the way people are now traveling, despite the fact that prices are going higher?
I think the boom will be there. But Abha, I wonder, because the competitive intensity will heat up in this sector over the next 2-3 years. I don't know how much money is there to be made for companies, for listed companies. Because mind you, a lot of them are not cheap.
Finally, Madhu, Diwali is a happy occasion, of course, and we wish you a very happy Diwali, but this is also going to be the first Diwali without Rakesh. At some point, at some level, this must be a sad thought, right?
It's an extremely sad thought. Then, we still can't reconcile it. He's no more with us, and you know how close he was to at least me, and he really played a big role in my life, so I certainly miss him. And I not miss him on Diwali, I actually miss him every day, honestly. And then just, we spoke a lot of sectors very freely with you always, and a lot of companies also we mentioned. Just as a disclaimer, people are requested to do their own homework before acting on any of them.
Of course. We'll leave it there, Madhu. Always great speaking to you, and once again a very happy Diwali, and thank you for taking time out for us.
Thank you, Madhu.
Thank you so much. All the best. Thank you.